Welcome back. You're watching Weekend Live on SABC2. 2007 has been an extraordinary year for many reasons. For one, we're beginning to see a shift in the political landscape. The Springboks are Rugby World Cup champions and Nelson Mandela turned 89. And like never before, South Africans are writing incredible stories, but more books don't necessarily translate into more readers. For a review of the year that was and the state of the SA literary scene, I'm joined in our Cape Town studios by the MD of Maskew Miller Longman, Fatima Dada. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Sherwin.
Here in Johannesburg, the CEO of the Right Company, Amanda Patterson, joins us. Literary consultant attached to the South African Literary Awards, Raksiahwa, is my guest. And Barry Ronga joins us again for this discussion. Thanks so much, Barry. I think, Amanda Patterson, let's start with you. 2007 really has seen a surge in new authors, people writing, not because there's a cause, but because they can. What have you made of 2007?
I think it's been a really interesting year. I think that it's showing us that there's a trend away from the political stories towards the mass market genre. I mean, the second Spud book obviously has come out and made a huge success. And also Angela McCall was brought out Red Ink. She is the first black South African woman to write mass market fiction. It's a serial killer thriller and it's doing really well for Macmillan. So that is, I think, positive. I think obviously the non-fiction political stuff is still doing exceptionally well. But you're right, people are writing just because they can and because they think it's a good thing to do. So we're happy.
Do you agree with that sentiment?
Oh yes, of course, yeah. It's been quite an interesting turn of events when it comes to this kind of writing for mass market. As you remember, in the olden days, it was very, people will be writing, but the readership will be quite small, except, of course, if the book is a set book for schools. But with what Amanda is saying here, I agree quite totally.
Opening remarks, Barry?
Well, I'm really excited that if you go to a big chain like Exclusive Books, you will see that 6 of the 10 bestsellers are South African. And they range from the President Mbeki biography of Mark Gaffitta through to David Bullard's Thoughts on the World. And I think that range is incredible. And 6 out of 10 bestsellers, that's good stuff.
Fatima Dada in Cape Town, literary critics caution us against far too much excitement over what they call bumper-heeled in English. Of course, when you talk about literature in South Africa, one has to look a little more broader than that.
Yes, although I must agree with the other panelists, the resurgence in local publishing, in the trade publishing area, is fantastic. In fact, I was recently at the Maskew Miller Longman Literary Award in Johannesburg, and the prize for the Zulu category was won by a policeman who had asked his station commander whether he could type up his manuscript before sending it for the competition after hours. And I think those kinds of stories are great, and we really need more of them. Another example was a mother and son from Limpopo who won the Sepedi category and the son the English category. So, I mean, it's really exciting that reading is becoming more mainstream in the South African publishing industry. Up to about 5 years ago, it was really educational publishing that really made the publishing industry. So that is really great. However, the damper on this is that our children are not really performing very well in reading. We've had several international studies over the last 3 to 5 years, and South Africa has really generally come bottom of the class, or very near bottom of the class. So I guess we need to ask some questions about that. What are we doing in terms of growing a greater reading public in South Africa, and what are the issues and concerns causing this lack of reading amongst our youth and our children?
Well, let's put it to you there, Fatima. I mean, what are we doing? And I know Maskew Miller Longman is focused on the educational side of literature, issues around illiteracy, producing material that are reader-friendly. What has your approach been when one considers the difficulties we have when we talk about 11 official languages in this country?
Yes, Sherwin, I think it's very important for people to read in their home language, especially at a young age. And unfortunately, the library scene, the public library scene in South Africa has really taken a dive over the past 10 to 15 years. So because of that, there's lack of exposure for a lot of indigenous literature for young children. And I think maybe that has played a role. I think government policy has played a role in terms of the educational curriculum in schools. For about a 5-year period, reading was really downplayed very much in the teaching arena in primary schools. And therefore, we sit with a number of teachers who are really unable to enthuse children to be able to read more and to teach reading. It is a skill. If you look at it from an educational point of view, it is also a leisure activity, but it is a skill that's developed over time. You know, people learn to love reading. So there's several issues, several contributory factors. For example, with such a vast proportion of our society living in rural areas and with high illiteracy rates in our rural areas and to some extent in our urban areas, we don't really have reading homes into which children are born.
Let me just bring some of my guests back into the discussion here in yes. Johannesburg, if I may. Raxa, what are publishers doing in terms of creating this indigenous language base? I mean, it's important, I think, for kids to be able to learn at an early age, but also to learn in their own languages.
Well, I think one of the things that are important happening right now is, you know, if you were to talk in terms of music, take the example of music, you know, the live side of things. I'm quite, you know, happy to see that you've got readings taking place all over, especially the youth. Mostly it's around poetry and, of course, you know, yes. a bit of rap. But also, for instance, we in the South African Literary Awards make sure that some of the awards are really, you know, in indigenous languages, people who you award. Like this year, the Nadine Korima Short Story Award for writing in African languages was won by Bruce Ngobeni, who's writing in Xitsonga. And we find that the man has been writing for many years. He's got a lot of books under his belt.
Amanda Patterson, let's bring you in here. What's your view? What's the role of publishers in this regard?
I think that the role of publishers should be more progressive than it is. I think they should be encouraging mass market fiction. I keep on saying that because we have to bridge that whole old school of the Nadim Gordimer, the Andre Brink, the James Coetzee, who have really outdone themselves in terms of literary fiction in this country. I mean, to have 2 Nobel Prize winners for literature in one country is amazing, but why do we have to keep on rehashing that? No one wants to read it anymore, with all due respect. I mean, you have to read it in schools, and you have to read it at university.
Okay.
And, no, but I see it, and I see it every single day. And just speaking about the reading, there's a huge problem with that. We started something called the Right Foundation at the Right Company. And what we are doing is we're starting a songwriting contest in January and February next year to try and get the youth in this country to start doing things with words, even if it's 10 words or 20 words. It's an SMS campaign. Send in your entries, and then we're having musicians and people like that putting them to music. And at the end of the year, there's going to be a big party, and they're going to win a ringtone, you know, from Vodacom or MTN or whoever, you know. And it's just, you've got to engage them on their level, the youth. You can't do that.
Very wrong. I mean, Fatima Dada in Cape Town making the point that reading is something that needs to be taught. You need to introduce it to your kids at an early age. And I know that you, once a year at least in your column, tell us about the wonderful books that you've read this past year. Speak to that, if you will.
Truly, we must make them love reading. Reading should be sexy and fun. What happened when the Harry Potter book was launched? People were queuing from 7 p.m. in the evening so that they could get that midnight book. We talk about the publisher's responsibility. I also see a bookseller's responsibility. I want to see them using their very glamorous shops for storytelling workshops, for readathons. Wouldn't it be wonderful to say, let's read all the Harry Potter books in one long readathon and get the kids in to read and be read to make it an activity and an adventure. And that's not going to happen in a publisher's office. It's going to happen in the bookshops.
Fatima Dada, you're laughing in Cape Town. I mean, South African writing, and you agree with me, is distorted by low literacy rates coupled with people that just don't want to read. You're saying libraries are important and parents need to come to the party.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a few years ago, the Centre for the Book in Cape Town had a fantastic program that was funded with foreign funding, and I think our government should maybe try and buy into this kind of scenario where there was a literature award for South African writers and illustrators for young children, and then thousands of books were given away at antenatal clinics to parents in very disadvantaged areas. And many of those books, you know, got airtime, whereas they wouldn't have in the past. And what was even more rewarding was, I think, thousands of children got to touch and feel and engage with books where previously they may not have. And I think that's the kind of feel you really want, you know, to start children at a really early age, get them to feel, touch, read, engage with pictures, so that they do develop a love for reading. I think the internet has played a positive role to some extent in other parts of the world, where although it's sometimes viewed negatively, it does encourage people to read. You know, when you go on the internet, you generally tend to read. But once again, in South Africa, not that many people have access.
And there, unfortunately, we have to leave this discussion. Thanks to all my guests, Fatima Dada in Cape Town, and here in Johannesburg, Amanda Patterson of the Right Company, Raksiahwa of the South African Literature Awards, and Barry Ronga, who needs no introduction. We're back in a moment.